If you're over 70, you probably know this exact moment. 1:47 a.m., 3:12 a.m. Your eyes open before you know why. Your heart isn't racing, but it's a little too awake. Your brain feels slightly on guard, as if someone flipped a switch inside you without asking. This is not aging. This is chemistry. What happens when your nighttime cortisol refuses to go fully quiet? Inside the body, three things go wrong at once. When glucose dips even a little, the brain fires a small cortisol burst to protect its fuel. When the HPA axis loses its 24-hour rhythm, cortisol never fully shuts down at night. And when melatonin rises but can't fully stabilize sleep architecture, the brain produces microarousals, the tiny wake-ups that hit exactly when you tend to wake, between 1 and 3 in the morning. And here's the part seniors are rarely told. In the right form and at the right time, certain bedtime vegetables can help crush those nighttime cortisol spikes. They steady evening glucose, support GABA, deepen sleep structure, and help your system finally shift into true night mode. I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed, a physician in aging and sleep physiology for over 25 years, and in this video, 5 bedtime vegetables crush cortisol. We'll count down the 5 strongest options for adults over 70, from the gentlest effect to the one powerful enough to cut microarousals by as much as 60%. Before we begin, hit like, share this with someone who keeps waking at 3 a.m., and subscribe so you don't miss the next sleep guide. Number 5, carrots. Carrots seem simple, but at night, their carotenoid profile does something most seniors never connect to sleep. It supports retinal downshifting, the biological signal that helps your brain stop interpreting the environment as daytime. Here's why that matters. Between 8 p.m. and your melatonin onset, the retina sends a constant stream of information to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the part of the brain that sets your clock for the night. When carotenoid levels are adequate, especially after age 60, the retina becomes more efficient at reducing daytime-style signaling. That downshift is what allows melatonin to rise smoothly. When it's weak, melatonin climbs in a jagged pattern, and that leads to the classic senior problem. Fall asleep normally, then break awake 90 to 150 minutes later. Carrots help prevent exactly that pattern because their carotenoids act as light processing stabilizers. Seniors frequently have reduced carotenoid density in retinal tissue, something several ophthalmology studies highlight, meaning the brain receives noisier signals in the evening. More noise, less melatonin, more microarousals. But this only works if carrots are prepared the right way. Raw carrots don't release enough carotenoids to influence nighttime physiology. Overcooked carrots lose potency. The sweet spot is high heat roasting, which increases carotenoid availability by 2 to 3 times and pairs perfectly with a small amount of fat to aid absorption. There's also a second effect most people don't realize. Carrots provide a slow, mild carbohydrate release that prevents early night glucose dips. Seniors often don't feel these dips happening, but the brain senses them and immediately pushes cortisol upward to protect energy, exactly the wrong signal at night. Carrots soften that drop just enough to prevent a cortisol spike without causing a glucose surge. It's subtle, but clinical sleep diets often rely on this small stabilization window to make melatonin expression more predictable. Now, here is the precise nighttime protocol, because with vegetables, details truly determine the effect. First, chop the carrots and roast them for exactly 14 minutes at 415 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the temperature and time window that keeps carotenoids intact while preventing a sharp rise in blood sugar. Second, add 1 teaspoon of avocado oil after roasting. Carotenoids require fat to be absorbed. Olive oil works, but avocado oil is more stable at high heat and delivers a cleaner uptake for seniors. Third, keep the portion between 120 and 150 grams. That range supports retinal signaling without putting extra pressure on nighttime digestion. Fourth, eat the carrots 90 minutes before bed. That timing lines up with the natural melatonin rise in older adults. Too early, the effect fades. Too late, digestion competes with your nervous system's ability to downshift. Fifth, avoid 2 mistakes: no honey glazes, No heavy-carb dinners on the same plate. Both cause glucose swings that completely override the cortisol calming effect. And here is what most seniors notice first. Not that they sleep longer, but that the sudden wake-ups in the first half of the night begin to disappear. That is the mark of melatonin onset stabilizing again. Carrots do not sedate you. They restore a nighttime signal your brain depends on, a signal many older adults have been missing for years. Number 4, zucchini. For many older adults, the heart, not the mind and not the gut, is what breaks the night apart. You lie down feeling fine, fall asleep without much trouble, and then somewhere between sleep stages, the heart rate nudges upward. Not a panic, not a racing pulse, just a subtle elevation that pushes the nervous system out of the deeper layers of sleep and into a fragile state where waking becomes far more likely. That pattern is extremely common after 60. As the cardiovascular system becomes more sensitive and the autonomic nerves lose some of their flexibility, even a small nighttime fluctuation can fragment sleep. The mistake most seniors make is assuming this is purely emotional or hormonal. In reality, a large share of these nighttime heart rate spikes come from food signals, especially how well or how poorly the digestive system cooperates with the nervous system in the evening. Zucchini sounds almost too simple to matter, yet it's one of the cleanest nighttime vegetables for restoring autonomic balance. It contains a unique combination of potassium and what researchers call structured intracellular water, a form of water naturally bound inside plant cells that hydrates tissues more gradually than plain water. That slow hydration reduces sympathetic activity and supports the vagus nerve, the system responsible for maintaining a stable heart rhythm while you sleep. When adults over 60 eat zucchini at night, the most consistent change is that nightly heart lift, the one that tends to happen during light stage transitions, begins to flatten out, the body stays calmer, the shift between sleep stages becomes smoother, and deep sleep becomes more accessible. In sleep labs, seniors who stabilize nighttime vagal tone often show fewer microarousals and better sleep continuity, even without changing anything else in their routine. For zucchini to create this effect, preparation matters. It needs to be cooked lightly, not raw, not heavily seasoned, not drowned in sauces. A simple sauté for about 5 minutes keeps the cell structure intact while making it gentle for older digestion. A pinch of sea salt helps potassium absorption without increasing nighttime fluid load. When eaten about 60 minutes before bed, zucchini delivers its calming effect exactly when the nervous system begins its nighttime descent. The portion doesn't need to be large. Around 100 to 120 grams is enough to shift cardiac rhythm stability without adding digestive stress. Seniors with sensitive stomachs often find zucchini easier than nearly any other nighttime vegetable because it produces almost no gas, no pressure, no fermentation, nothing that would excite the vagus nerve in the wrong direction. There are 2 common mistakes to avoid. Do not eat zucchini raw at night. Raw forms trigger mild digestive activation that cancels out its calming benefits. And avoid pairing it with tomato sauce or acidic toppings after 6 p.m. These can activate reflux pathways and stimulate nocturnal heart rate. When used correctly for several nights, zucchini doesn't just make you feel lighter. It helps restore the cardiovascular stillness required for deep, continuous sleep. Older adults often describe the change the same way. My heart finally stayed quiet all night, and for many, that one shift is enough to keep the night from breaking apart. Number 3, spinach. There's a specific type of nighttime disruption that becomes more common after 60. The mind slows down, the body wants to rest, but the deeper layers of the nervous system refuse to quiet. You're tired yet alert, heavy yet awake. It's not stress. It's not overthinking. It's the simple fact that your GABA system, the brake pedal of the brain, is no longer receiving the mineral support it once did. And in older adults, that missing support shows up most clearly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., the window where cortisol should drop sharply but often doesn't. Spinach, when prepared correctly, is one of the few evening vegetables strong enough to intervene in that system. It is rich in bioavailable magnesium, the mineral that directly supports GABA receptor activation. But here's the part almost nobody explains. Magnesium from supplements often works inconsistently in seniors, especially those with slower digestion. Magnesium from lightly cooked spinach behaves differently. It binds with organic acids in the leaf, making absorption smoother and quicker, right when the nervous system needs it most. The contrast between cooked and raw spinach is critical. Raw leaves contain oxalates, compounds that bind minerals and irritate digestion in older adults. That irritation feels subtle, but at night it activates the sympathetic nervous system, the exact signal you're trying to shut down. This is why so many seniors who proudly eat evening salads still complain of fragmented sleep or waking wide awake at 1 or 2 in the morning. The raw form creates a quiet neurological conflict. The cooked form resolves it. When spinach is lightly sautéed for about 2 minutes, the oxalates drop, the magnesium becomes more available, and the leaf relaxes the gut instead of stimulating it. That combination, magnesium absorption plus reduced digestive activation, is precisely what lowers nighttime cortisol in older adults. In sleep clinics, seniors with stubborn early-night microarousals often see improvement within 48 to 72 hours of adding cooked spinach into their evening routine. The pathway is simple but powerful. Magnesium supports GABA. GABA lowers neural firing. Lower neural firing suppresses residual cortisol, and suppressed cortisol allows melatonin to do its job without interference. What begins as a small change in mineral intake ends in a measurable reduction in the alert brain, tired body pattern so common after 60. Spinach works best when treated as a targeted tool, not a random vegetable. About 75 grams cooked, roughly a small handful before sautéing, is enough to shift nighttime physiology. Add a squeeze of lemon during the last 20 seconds of cooking. The mild acidity enhances mineral uptake without irritating digestion. The timing matters too. Eat it roughly 2 hours before bed. Earlier than that, and the magnesium effect weakens. Too close to bedtime, and the digestive system stays slightly active when it should be going quiet. There are mistakes to avoid. Do not pair spinach with dairy in the evening. The calcium competes with magnesium absorption. And avoid raw spinach entirely at night. It is a common cause of silent sympathetic activation in older adults who believe they're doing something healthy. When seniors apply this spinach protocol for several nights, the result is rarely dramatic at first. Instead, it's the slow disappearance of a pattern they thought was permanent. The mind stops jolting awake without reason. The nervous system finally downshifts. And for many, this is the first vegetable that allows their sleep to feel protected again. Number 2, purple sweet potato. One of the most persistent sleep problems I see in older adults is this. The night begins well, the first stretch feels steady, and then somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m., your system loses its footing. Not because of dreams, not because of stress, but because the brain runs out of stable fuel, triggering a cortisol rise that snaps the body awake even when the mind wants to stay asleep. This nighttime cortisol rescue is one of the most common causes of early night fragmentation after 60. Purple sweet potatoes address this problem in a way almost no other evening carbohydrate can. Most seniors are used to eating orange sweet potatoes, believing they're choosing a gentle, healthy nighttime starch. But the orange varieties digest quickly, raise glucose sharply, and drop it just as fast. That spike and crash is precisely what drives nighttime cortisol activation. Purple sweet potatoes behave differently. Their resistant starch slows digestion, creating a long, steady glucose curve that lasts well into the early morning hours. When your brain receives stable energy across that vulnerable window, the cortisol spike simply doesn't need to happen. And the anthocyanins, much higher in purple varieties, add a second protective effect. They reduce inflammatory signaling in brain regions tied to stress arousal, making REM transitions and deep sleep cycles far smoother. This is where the contrast becomes important. Orange sweet potatoes are excellent daytime foods, but for older adults at night, they burn too fast. Purple sweet potatoes release energy slowly, quietly, and predictably. Exactly the pattern your sleep architecture depends on once melatonin rises. There's also a preparation detail that makes a measurable difference: cooling. When you steam the potato and then let it cool, resistant starch increases significantly. That shift turns it from a simple carbohydrate into a slow-release fuel source tailored to aging digestion. It lowers glycemic load, decreases digestive activation, and extends energy support into the part of the night when most seniors struggle. One of my patients, Helen, 74, had been waking around 1:50 a.m. for over 8 years. She assumed it was hormonal or simply my age. But when we replaced her orange sweet potato with a properly cooled purple one, her wake-up time pushed later, then disappeared. Not because we sedated her system, but because her brain finally stayed fueled long enough to keep sleep intact. Here's the protocol, exactly as I use it in clinic. Steam the purple sweet potato for 12 minutes. Then let it cool for 25 minutes to build resistant starch. Eat the skin. The highest concentration of anthocyanins lives there. Keep the portion around 100 to 120 grams. You can add a small touch of almond butter or cinnamon for even better glucose stability. And most importantly, eat it 60 minutes before bed. Too early and the glucose support fades. Too late and digestion stays active during melatonin rise. Avoid pairing it with heavy dinners or high-sugar sauces. They override the effect and bring the cortisol spike right back. Used correctly, this vegetable doesn't just help you fall asleep. It protects the stretch of night most older adults lose, the quiet, uninterrupted hours when recovery finally happens. Number 1, broccoli sprouts. For adults over 70, the most overlooked part of sleep isn't how quickly you fall asleep. It's how your brain manages stress signals after midnight. The body tries to move into deeper stages, but something keeps pushing it back up. You fall asleep, but the sleep never locks. The second half of the night becomes thin, fragile, and easily disturbed by the smallest internal signal. This is the signature of cortisol dysregulation, and broccoli sprouts are the strongest natural intervention I've found for restoring that rhythm. Unlike regular broccoli, the sprouted form contains exponentially higher sulforaphane, a compound that doesn't sedate you, doesn't raise melatonin, doesn't work like a supplement. Instead, it works at the genetic level. Sulforaphane downregulates stress response genes inside the HPA axis and supports the enzymes that keep cortisol low at night and responsive in the morning. In other words, it restores the shape of your cortisol curve, the very pattern that dictates whether sleep stays intact or fractures into microarousals. Most seniors have never heard this, but sulforaphane isn't strongest in mature broccoli. It peaks in sprouts that are 3 to 5 days old, when the plant is biochemically primed for growth, not defense. At that stage, sulforaphane concentration is 20 to 50 times higher, and that potency is exactly what helps older adults whose cortisol rhythm has drifted so far off track. Here's the contrast that matters. Anti-inflammatory vegetables reduce discomfort, magnesium-rich vegetables calm the nervous system, and resistant starch vegetables stabilize glucose. But broccoli sprouts act one layer deeper. They reprogram the cortisol machinery itself. That's why they sit at number 1. One of my patients, Samuel, age 76, had been waking between 3 and 3:30 a.m. for more than a decade. His glucose was stable, his digestion was fine, his melatonin levels were low, but not abnormal for his age. The real issue was cortisol that never fully shut down at night. 2 weeks after adding broccoli sprouts, prepared correctly, his wake-up time pushed to 5 a.m. By week 4, he slept through the night 3 times in 1 week, something he told me hadn't happened since his 50s. And the key was not the vegetable, it was the activation of sulforaphane. Here is the protocol exactly, because sprouts are powerful only when prepared correctly. Use 3 to 5 day old sprouts. Younger sprouts are weak, older sprouts lose potency. The 3 to 5 day window is the sweet spot. Chop or lightly crush them, then wait 40 minutes. This allows myrosinase, an enzyme released by cutting, to convert glucoraphanin into sulforaphane. If you skip this step, the effect drops dramatically. Add a pinch of mustard powder. Mustard seed adds extra myrosinase and boosts sulforaphane formation by up to 4 times. Portion, approximately 30 grams. This is enough for cortisol support without overwhelming digestion. Eat them 3 hours before bed. Any closer and digestion becomes active during melatonin rise. Earlier than 3 hours, and the sulforaphane signal fades before the critical late-night cortisol window. Do not heat. Heat destroys myrosinus. If you want warm food, add sprouts after cooking. Avoid pairing with dairy. Certain proteins bind sulforaphane and reduce its absorption. When seniors follow this correctly, the most common report isn't falling asleep faster. It's my night finally held together. Fewer microarousals, a smoother descent into deeper stages, and the big one, waking closer to morning with a head that feels calm instead of overstimulated. Broccoli sprouts don't make you sleepy. They correct the cortisol rhythm that determines whether sleep remains continuous, the very function that weakens most dramatically after 70. That is why they are number one. You don't need all 5 vegetables at once. In fact, most seniors get the fastest improvements by starting small. Choose one vegetable from the list, usually carrots or zucchini, because they're gentle, predictable, and easy to prepare consistently. Use it for 3 nights in a row at the correct timing and portion. Once your body begins to stabilize evening glucose and lower baseline cortisol, add a second vegetable from the higher impact group, spinach or purple sweet potato. These build deeper effects, GABA activation, smoother transitions into sleep stages, and fewer microarousals. When you feel ready, introduce broccoli sprouts. They work on the long arc of cortisol regulation, not the quick fix. The rule is simple. Consistency beats intensity. A small, repeatable signal each night works better than trying to overhaul everything at once. Every vegetable in this countdown affects a different sleep circuit. Carrots support melatonin onset. Zucchini steadies cardiovascular transitions. Spinach activates GABA and lowers cortisol tone. Purple sweet potatoes stabilize nighttime energy. And broccoli sprouts reshape the rhythm that decides whether your nights stay whole or fragment. When you eat the right vegetable at the right time and in the right preparation, you're not just improving digestion. You're correcting the biological signals that determine whether you drift through the night or snap awake in the dark. Sleep after 60 isn't lost. It's disrupted, and disruptions can be repaired. The body still knows how to sleep deeply. It simply needs clearer instructions than it did decades ago. These vegetables are those instructions, natural, accessible, and far more powerful than most people realize. Try one tonight. Watch what changes by morning, then build from there. If you found this helpful, like the video, share it with someone who struggles to stay asleep, and subscribe for the next guide in this series on senior sleep biology. And tell me in the comments, which vegetable will you try first tonight?